15 seconds.
Rescue 911.
Yes. My name's Blaine Milam, and my daughter, I just found her dead.
How old's your daughter?
13 months.
Ma'am, we're going to try CPR anyway, okay?
16
Get her to the phone now.
51 minutes, 26 seconds.
Jenner! Blaine Jenner, hurry!
Are you there?
Yes.
Y'all stalling is not helping her at all.
Go ahead.
If he's not going to do it, you put the phone down and go get that baby and get her to the phone.
The heart-wrenching sound you just heard was a desperate 911 call from the parents of Amora Carson, a fragile infant whose life was tragically cut short. When Texas authorities arrived at the Tatum residence, they were confronted with a devastating scene: a baby girl, lifeless and grievously injured, lying on the floor. The horrific sight left them shaken to their core. Yet what truly shocked them were the dark and chilling secrets the mother harbored about her own daughter.
Told me she got that hammer and was hitting herself in the head, and those marks on her head was, I think, from that hammer where she was hitting herself, or that demon was hitting herself on the head.
As detectives uncovered the full extent of the nightmare, they declared it one of the most harrowing and disturbing cases in the annals of criminal history.
I'll never forget the bite marks. From the toe to the chin to over the mouth and nose on the child. I've never seen anything like it in my life.
December 2nd, 2008 began as a seemingly ordinary day in the quiet town of Tatum, Texas. The peace, however, was shattered by an unimaginable tragedy that would forever change the lives of Jessica Carson, Amora, and Blaine Milam. That morning, the family made a chilling discovery: the lifeless body of their beloved baby girl, Amora, lying in a hole within the bathroom that Milam had been renovating. Overcome with terror, they immediately dialed 911 at approximately 10:30 a.m. Law enforcement quickly responded, arriving at the Tatum residence to investigate the horrific scene.
I was sitting right here at this desk where we are now, and I received a phone call from the lieutenant of the Rusk County Sheriff's Department CID division. And he told me that they had a dead baby, gave me the location, and he said, "You need to come out here."
When authorities entered the house, they were met with a horrifying scene that would haunt them forever. Bloodstains were scattered across the walls and floor, telling a story of unimaginable violence. Lying there in the center of the room was little Amora. Her tiny body was cold and rigid, bearing the devastating marks of brutal torture. Investigators found evidence of severe beatings, bites, strangulation, and repeated blows with a heavy object, possibly a hammer. Her fragile frame was riddled with fractures and injuries so grotesque that it was almost unrecognizable, evoking haunting images of horror figures like Chucky or the creatures from a pet cemetery. Each wound on Amora's body spoke volumes of the agony she had suffered in her final moments. This heart-wrenching tragedy sent shockwaves through the community, leaving everyone who knew her in tears and disbelief. Amora's death was a painful reminder of the darkness that can lurk behind closed doors.
Yeah, she laughed a lot. Used to make funny noises for her, little duck noises. And she'd just start cracking up.
You make duck noises.
Mm-hmm. It's like old Donald Duck noises and stuff. You know, stuff like that. She'd just look at me and just start busting laughing.
Here's a rewritten version of the text with a refined tone. Born on November 12, 2007, Amora was the cherished daughter of Jessica from her previous relationship with Arlene Mutina, an overseas Army serviceman. Despite not being Amora's biological father, Jessica's boyfriend Mam loved her deeply as if she were his own. Their bond was profound, filled with cherished memories that Mam held close to his heart. Losing Amora shattered him, leaving him with only one desire: to seek justice for the little girl he loved so dearly. The journey to uncover the truth behind Amora's tragic death, however, was fraught with horrifying revelations that would leave a lasting scar. Rusk County Patrol Sergeant Kevin Roy was among the first to arrive at the crime scene on the morning of December 2nd. As he examined the infant's lifeless body, he was struck by the sight of numerous circular bruises scattered across her fragile frame, marks that he suspected had been caused by a coiled object. Deeply shaken by what he witnessed, Sergeant Roy launched an investigation, focusing on Jessica and Mam, the only adults present in the house at the time of Amora's death. When questioned, the couple responded with a web of strange and conflicting stories, leaving investigators both shocked and determined to unravel the grim truth.
They gave us numerous stories at the onset. First, that the baby had been involved in a car crash the day before. Then the story was that the dogs at the house had gotten a hold of the baby. It was obvious it wasn't dogs.
Sensing inconsistencies in their accounts, the lead investigator, Sergeant Amber Rogers, along with Sergeant Kevin Roy, decided to question Mam and Jessica separately once again. This time, Mam provided Sergeant Kevin with yet another story. He claimed that he and Jessica had left Amora alone in the trailer while they visited a man named Clark, who was working on a nearby land clearing project. According to Mam, they had been gone for about an hour, and upon returning, they discovered Amora's crib empty. They found her in the bathroom, gravely injured and in a horrifying condition. The crime scene was meticulously examined, and all evidence was carefully documented. Shortly afterward, Texas Ranger Kenny Ray arrived at the scene. He observed Jessica and Mam crying and holding each other, their behavior resembling that of grieving parents. At first glance, they did not appear overtly suspicious, but their earlier inconsistent and bizarre accounts raised red flags for Ranger Kenny. He decided further questioning was necessary. Taking Mam into his patrol car for an official interview, Ranger Kenny pressed for clarity. Mam repeated the same story he had already shared with the authorities. He also provided the names of potential suspects and expressed outrage over the crime, stating that whoever was responsible deserved to be hung. Despite Mam's apparent cooperation, the lingering contradictions in his statements, paired with Jessica's, only deepened the investigators' suspicions. The search for the truth behind Amora's tragic fate continued, revealing layers of deception and a chilling web of...
Come on, sit down. It'd be warmer in here. Hey, Bub. Come on in, have a seat. I want to make sure that you understand I'm a Texas Ranger, okay? Mm-hmm. And I've got a tape recorder playing right now, but you're not under arrest. You understand that? Mm-hmm. I mean, you're sitting here in my car, and I'm talking because the tape can't see us. It can only hear us, okay? Yeah. But you don't have handcuffs on. No. I asked you to come over here and just sit down. We're just sitting and visiting. Is that right?
Right.
Now, what I want you to do, Blaine, is just in your own words, and I know this is hard, buddy, but I want you to just tell me what happened this morning.
I gave her a bottle. We were walking down to the property. We call it the property because that's where I'm having our new mobile home put.
Okay, you gave the baby a bottle?
Yes.
Okay.
It's in there on the bed.
All right, okay. Go ahead. And you and Jess walked down to the property?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So we just started marking off the stuff, and about an hour flies by, and between that hour and a half, we walk down here, walk in the house.
Okay. Go
and she wasn't nowhere to be found. Alright.
Okay. Go ahead, I'm listening to you.
Alright, and then by that time, we're searching for her, and there's a hole in my mama's bathroom.
Okay.
Alright. That's where she was.
Ranger Kenny then turned his attention to Jessica, interviewing her separately to compare her account with Mam's. It didn't take long for him to spot glaring inconsistencies between their stories. Jessica's version of events conflicted with key details Mam had provided, raising even more questions about what had truly transpired that fateful morning. While Mam insisted they had left Amora unattended to visit a nearby acquaintance, Jessica gave a fragmented account that painted a different timeline and set of circumstances. Her responses were hesitant and, at times, contradictory, further fueling Ranger Kenny's suspicions. The inconsistencies weren't just minor discrepancies. They pointed to deliberate obfuscation. As Ranger Kenny continued probing, the case took on a darker and more perplexing tone, leaving the investigators to piece together a puzzle that hinted at something far more sinister lurking beneath the surface.
Hey, come sit down. You're Jess? My name's Kenny Ray. I'm with the Texas Rangers, okay? Will you talk to me for a few minutes? Okay. I'm going to record what we say so I don't forget anything, okay? How old are you?
18.
Okay. All right, tell me, just start off. Tell me the story about what happened this morning.
Okay,
What from the?
we decided to go out to the property. So we walked down to the property, and we didn't plan on being there that long, but we just got and start talking details about everything, about the trailer and everything. And
Did Blaine resent you having the baby? Did that cause a problem in y'all's relationship?
no, he loved that little baby.
Why would he hurt her?
Huh?
Why would he hurt her?
He wouldn't.
Why would he lie to me then?
Huh?
Why would he lie to me? He told me you were an honor graduate in Longview High School. You're a very smart girl. Y'all were together this morning for about an hour or an hour and a half, and your stories do not match. One of you's lying to me, or both of you's lying. Right now is the time for you to tell me the truth about what. Let's get it out. That's the only way that this is ever going to be right, is for us to get it out. So right now, just tell me what happened.
I would never hurt that baby.
Tell me what happened.
I wouldn't either.
Tell me what happened.
He loves that little baby.
But just tell me the truth about what happened. Let's get it so you can get it off your chest. Because it's just going to eat you up if you don't. It's just going to eat you up.
No,
Tell me what happened.
I could tell you, but you wouldn't believe me.
I will. I will believe you.
No, you won't.
I will believe you. I promise
If you do, none of the other cops won't. Because it's something that they would not believe.
I will believe you. I promise you, I will believe you.
But they won't. And they're going to think we're lying about it, and we're not. That's why we made up this story.
When Ranger Kenny pressed Jessica firmly about the inconsistencies in her story, she broke down, revealing a shocking and unsettling claim. Jessica spoke of demonic possession, insisting that Amora had been overtaken by a dark force. She and Mam had attempted an exorcism to save the little girl. The revelation stunned the investigators. Jessica described bizarre and ritualistic actions they had taken, claiming they were trying to rid Amora of the supposed entity. Her account grew more disturbing with each detail, painting a harrowing picture of the events that had unfolded in the trailer. This unexpected twist shifted the investigation into uncharted territory. What had initially seemed like a case of physical violence now carried the chilling undertone of delusion and superstition. For Ranger Kenny and the team, the challenge was no longer just uncovering the facts, it was also unraveling the mindset that had led to such an unimaginable tragedy. As the truth began to surface, the horrifying nature of Amora's death became even clearer, leaving investigators to grapple with the reality of what they had discovered.
It started really freaking me out. And, now it's gotten into Amora now. And then I said, okay, well, can't we, have an exorcism or something to get rid of it? But Blaine came back outside, and I said, what did you run in the house saying Amora for? And he said, God told me she got that hammer and was hitting herself in the head, and those marks on her head was, I think, from that hammer where she was hitting herself, or that demon was hitting herself on the head.
Jessica's story took an even darker turn as she claimed that Amora had been possessed by a demon, and that it was this demon, not any person, that had killed the little girl by striking her with a hammer. Jessica vehemently insisted that Mam was innocent, asserting that he loved Amora deeply and would never harm her. However, investigators were not swayed by her bizarre tale. The details of the story, coupled with the inconsistencies in their accounts, pointed strongly to foul play. Acting swiftly, the authorities arrested both Jessica and Mam, transporting them to the sheriff's office for intensive questioning. During his interrogation, Mam continued to deny any involvement in Amora's tragic death, defending himself against the mounting suspicions. But the investigation was far from over. Determined to uncover the truth, investigators delved deeper into the couple's activities on the morning of December 2nd, 2008, peeling back layers of deception that would ultimately unravel their web of lies. One significant breakthrough came when authorities followed up on Mam's claim of visiting a man named Clark that morning. When they located Clark, he revealed that no such meeting had ever occurred, directly contradicting Mam's story. The mystery deepened further when Crystal Dobson, the manager of Instacash Pawn Shop in Henderson, stepped forward with shocking information. She reported that on the very morning of the incident, Jessica and Mam had visited her shop to pawn tools and borrow money. Surveillance footage confirmed her account, showing the pair at the shop for 15 minutes, completely dismantling Mam's timeline and exposing yet another lie. With each new discovery, the case grew more sinister, and the investigators' resolve to find justice for Amora only strengthened. The evidence now painted a chilling picture, leaving no doubt that Jessica and Mam were hiding far more than they were willing to admit.
In the pawn shop, he had some old tools. Like one of them was an old electric chainsaw that he was trying to pawn for money. Now, there's conflicting stories over why they were doing that, whether they were on the run or whether they were trying to get money for the alleged exorcism or things like that. But he's trying to pawn these tools.
Adding to the growing mystery, authorities uncovered more damning evidence about the couple's activities on the morning of December 2nd. Surveillance footage revealed that after leaving the pawn shop, Jessica and Mam had visited a Walmart shopping center and a gas station, all within minutes of each other. Their movements captured on CCTV painted a timeline that starkly contradicted their previous accounts. Further complicating the case, a chilling detail emerged from Mam's sister, Teresa Shea. She revealed that Mam had called her before 9:30 a.m. on December 2nd, crying and claiming that he had found Amora dead. Despite Teresa's desperate pleas for him to call 911 immediately, Mam delayed, waiting until 10:37 a.m. to report the incident. This delay raised serious questions about his actions and intentions that morning. As new clues surfaced, the case took an even more sinister turn, hinting at dark and horrifying secrets between Jessica and Mam. Their bizarre stories, combined with mounting evidence and Jessica's claims of demonic possession, left little doubt in the minds of investigators that the couple was complicit in Amora's tragic death. Then came the most harrowing revelation of all, Amora's autopsy report. The details it contained were so gruesome that even the seasoned forensic examiner was left shaken. The report confirmed that Amora had died from homicidal violence caused by multiple blunt force injuries and possible strangulation. The forensic analysis painted a horrifying picture. Amora had suffered multiple skull fractures, which interconnected like the pieces of a jigsaw puzzle. These injuries strongly indicated that she had been beaten severely, likely with a blunt object. Even more disturbing was the damage to her brain, torn and extensively traumatized, reflecting the unimaginable violence she endured in her final moments. With each new discovery, the case against Jessica and Mam grew stronger. The mounting evidence pointed to a chilling and deliberate act of brutality, leaving investigators determined to uncover the full extent of what had happened to little Amora, and to ensure justice was served for her tragic and senseless death.
With the estimation of how many fractures the child suffered, and a lot of them are what's called spiral fractures, which is the twisting of the bone, where the break, instead of going laterally or whatever, will go around the bone in a spiral shape.
The autopsy report revealed even more horrific injuries that deepened the investigators' resolve to uncover the truth. Amora's fragile body bore signs of unimaginable torment. She had spiral fractures in both an arm and a leg, injuries that indicated they had been twisted with force, a level of brutality almost impossible to comprehend. Her torso and ribs showed additional trauma, consistent with being struck repeatedly and squeezed violently. These injuries painted a devastating picture of the sheer suffering Amora endured in her final moments. The findings were gut-wrenching, even for seasoned professionals. The brutality inflicted on such a small, innocent child was beyond anything they had encountered before. Each detail further dismantled Jessica and Mam's claims of innocence, pointing instead to deliberate and heinous acts. With the mounting evidence, including the autopsy's harrowing revelations, investigators were more determined than ever to bring justice for Amora and ensure that those responsible for her tragic death would be held accountable.
Amora's body, and it's covered in what we later know are 24 bite marks.
The full extent of Amora's injuries was almost too horrific to comprehend. Her small body bore at least 24 distinct bite marks, and the scraping and bruising on her head and face were so severe that they merged into one massive, grotesque injury. Her liver had suffered extensive damage, and lacerations were found on the underside of her tongue. Injuries that spoke of extreme violence. Even more devastating were the wounds inflicted on her private areas, likely caused by blunt objects as well as clear marks of strangulation. The most harrowing discovery, however, was that Amora had endured all of this unimaginable torture while still alive. The revelations cast an even darker shadow over the case, pointing to a reality far more disturbing than anyone had initially imagined. Authorities, now desperate to uncover the truth, intensified their efforts to piece together the sequence of events leading to Amora's tragic death. Despite the mounting evidence, Milam continued to deny any involvement, stubbornly maintaining his innocence. However, during an intense interrogation, Jessica finally broke down. Tearfully, she revealed every horrifying detail of the so-called exorcism that had led to Amora's excruciating demise. Jessica's story began in January 2008 when she met Milam at a prom night event. She was immediately drawn to him, feeling an unexplainable connection that seemed destined. Over time, Milam proposed, and Jessica eagerly accepted, seeing in him a kind and caring man who could provide the love and fatherly support her daughter, Amora, needed. With hopeful optimism, she moved into Milam's apartment in Longview, Texas, dreaming of a better future for herself and her daughter. But the reality turned out to be far from what Jessica had envisioned. According to family and friends, Jessica had always been a devoted mother, doting on Amora and prioritizing her happiness. However, after moving in with Milam, things began to change. Milam's controlling nature quickly surfaced. He isolated Jessica from her social circle, cutting her off from friends and family, and manipulated her religious beliefs to suit his own twisted ideology. Over time, Jessica transformed. The once stylish, outgoing woman became withdrawn and unrecognizable, neglecting her appearance and losing her vibrant spirit. Then, in September 2008, Milam's father passed away from a stroke, and the already volatile relationship took a drastic turn for the worse. Milam's grief morphed into erratic and abusive behavior, and his manipulation of Jessica deepened. The combination of isolation, religious delusion, and Milam's increasingly controlling nature set the stage for the horrifying tragedy that would ultimately claim Amora's life.
After my husband died, it's like she just turned into a different person. But see, she lost her father too, you know, a while before Daniel passed away.
Milam was utterly devastated by the loss of his beloved father, who had been both a mentor and a close friend. The grief consumed him, but instead of seeking solace, he became increasingly volatile. By October 2008, his behavior had escalated into violent and manipulative patterns, particularly toward Jessica. Incidents of domestic abuse grew more frequent, and Jessica, trapped in an ever-darkening situation, began cutting off contact with her friends and loved ones. Whenever anyone tried to visit or reach out, Jessica always had an excuse, a facade carefully crafted under Milam's control. He micromanaged her every move, forbidding her from leaving the apartment unless he accompanied her, even to his workplace. Her once vibrant social connections were severed, leaving her isolated and dependent entirely on Milam. Consumed by jealousy and insecurity, Milam showed Jessica little respect or empathy. However, his behavior toward Amora was strangely different. Despite his controlling nature, Milam appeared affectionate and attentive toward the child, often playing with her and sharing moments that seemed genuinely tender. This stark contrast in his behavior baffled those who later examined the couple's life, raising unsettling questions about what was truly happening behind closed doors. Jessica, now fully under Milam's influence, told investigators about a bizarre sequence of events that soon began to disrupt their lives, a chain of delusions and superstitions that would eventually lead to unimaginable tragedy.
It was in September. Blaine's dad died in September, early September, and right after he died, we bought an Ouija board.
Okay.
And we didn't know they were bad and it was an omen or anything like that. Like, we're very strong believers of God and everything. And we bought an Ouija board, and then, you know, we heard that it worked, but we never actually did believe people when they said it would work. So we wanted to try it out for ourselves. And then, you know, my dad's dead too. He died when I was 10.
I'm sorry.
And, So I asked my daddy that I thought, a question that he would know that nobody else would know. And I had never told Blaine that. And so when he spelled it out and everything, I was like, this is my daddy. And so we did that, and this is like a telephone to heaven, and we thought it was really cool and everything. So we kept talking to our dads, telling them how much we missed them. And, and we talked to him for about 8 hours straight that night. And we started getting really freaked. And we got this little music box from one of his friends that's Chinese, and it has these Chinese people singing, God will protect us, demons leave this house, because they said our apartment was possessed because weird stuff started happening and everything. So we left, and we kept that music box there and blessed it, and then we blessed the Ouija board, and then we threw it away. Kind of like The Exorcist, have you ever seen, when demons come into people or whatever. And the devil had came into Blaine, and it sounds crazy, but I would not be making this stuff up.
I'm a Christian. I believe in demon possession.
Yeah, and I am too. And I kind of knew. I knew about demon possession, but you can't really believe something for sure until you see it with your own eyes. And so when the devil started coming in me, talking to me, saying, I'm gonna take Blaine's soul tonight, all this kind of stuff, it started really freaking me out. And now it's gotten into a more now. And then I said, okay, well, can't we have an exorcism or something to get rid of it? I was like, there's got to be something else we can do. I was like, we can get money, we can go to a minister and see if he can help, or go to find a priest somewhere and see if, we can make payments on him doing exorcism or something. See if we can do just anything. There's got to be another way. And he said, God said it was too late. And I was like, what do you mean God said it was too late? And then he was crying while he was saying this and everything. He was like, because if she doesn't go to heaven now, she will live her life with Satan having her soul.
In an attempt to connect with their deceased fathers, Jessica and Mam purchased a Ouija board, hoping it would bring them closer to the spirits of their loved ones. However, during one of their sessions, the board delivered a shocking and deeply unsettling message to Jessica. It claimed that her mother had killed her father during her childhood. Devastated and unable to process the revelation, Jessica cut off all communication with her mother, sinking deeper into isolation. Soon after, Jessica began to feel that their apartment was haunted by malevolent spirits. Terrified and desperate for safety, the couple decided to move to Mam's mother's house in Tatum. Initially, their new living arrangement brought some semblance of peace, and Jessica, Mam, and Amora seemed to live happily together. But the tranquility didn't last. Jessica started noticing unsettling changes in Mam's behavior. His voice, expressions, and overall demeanor grew increasingly erratic. Convinced that Mam was possessed by demons, Jessica confronted him one day. To her shock, Mam admitted to being possessed but blamed Jessica, claiming her lies had invited the spirits into their lives. He further insisted that the demon within him had granted him the power to communicate with God. According to Jessica, Mam's behavior toward Amora remained disturbingly tender. Even during his supposed episodes of possession, he was affectionate and attentive toward the child, a stark contrast to his increasingly controlling and abusive treatment of Jessica. Things took a darker turn when Mam's mother, who also lived with them, left to stay with a relative, leaving Jessica, Mam, and Amora alone in the house. Jessica would later reflect that perhaps if Mam's mother had stayed, the horrific events of the following days might have been prevented. On the night of December 1st, 2008, Mam woke Jessica with a chilling claim. Amora, who was far too young to walk, had been possessed by a demon and was walking around the house. He insisted this was a divine punishment because Jessica had not been truthful with him, and God was angry at her lies. Mam claimed that the demon had now taken control of Amora's body. Desperate and frightened, Jessica pleaded for a solution. Mam responded that God would guide him in performing an exorcism to save Amora from the demonic possession. Trusting Mam's assurance that it would help her daughter, Jessica agreed to let him do whatever was necessary. What followed was a series of unthinkable actions that would culminate in a tragedy so horrifying it would shake the entire community.
Supposedly was sitting in the living room watching TV while he's right inside the door there doing whatever to this child.
As the alleged exorcism began, Jessica relaxed in the master bedroom, watching TV, while Mam took little Amora into the back bedroom to perform what he claimed would save her from the demon. What unfolded during those harrowing hours was far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. Jessica later recounted hearing Amora's terrified cries from the room, but she convinced herself that it was part of the exorcism process and did nothing to intervene. After some time, she entered the room to check on her daughter. Mam calmly told her that Amora was hiding under the bed. Jessica looked and saw her daughter alive and seemingly unharmed, so she left as instructed, allowing Mam to continue. The exorcism lasted through the night and into the early hours of December 2nd. By morning, Jessica and Mam left the house for Walmart. During the drive, Mam expressed his growing desperation to free Amora from what he believed was demonic possession, even going so far as to say he would sell her soul to the devil to save her. Jessica insisted that her daughter's soul should instead go to heaven, but despite her unease, she returned home with Mam and allowed him to continue the so-called exorcism. Back at the house, the ordeal resumed. Jessica admitted to investigators that she could hear horrifying sounds from the back bedroom, the cries of the demon, violent banging, and other chilling noises. Despite this, she did nothing to stop Mam. He used heavy objects during the ritual and, at one point, tied Amora with a rope, claiming it was necessary to subdue the demon. Jessica also claimed that Amora had been biting Mam fiercely during the process, but the truth was far more horrifying. The child had been brutally bitten, her small body bearing the marks of at least 24 bite wounds inflicted during the ordeal. The situation escalated to its tragic climax when Amora's tiny battered body was left lifeless in a hole in the bathroom floor. Only then did Mam and Jessica finally call 911 at approximately 10:30 a.m. But by then, it was far too late to save her. This chilling sequence of events would later reveal the unimaginable horror of Amora's final hours and expose the dark delusions that had consumed the couple, leading to the unspeakable tragedy.
How long this exorcism, or what I would refer to as a torture of Amora, went on before that, we don't know. But there are injuries to Amora's at some point in the early morning hours of December 2nd.
You find ways to deal with it, but what I'll never forget the bite marks. From the toe to the chin to over the mouth and nose. It was almost as if someone was trying to, suck out demons from the nose and mouth, the way the bite mark or the mouth print was on the child. I've never seen anything like it in my life.
Submissive and deeply convinced of Mam's love for her and Amora, Jessica believed he would never harm them. Her misplaced trust allowed her to remain complicit in the unfolding horrors. When the police arrived and began questioning the couple, both Jessica and Mam stuck to fabricated stories, weaving a web of lies to obscure the truth. However, as investigators pieced together the harrowing details, they realized something wasn't adding up. Determined to ensure no evidence had been overlooked, authorities decided to conduct another thorough search of Mam's trailer on December 11, 2008. What they found was both shocking and disturbing. The crime scene they had initially examined was a staged one. Mam and Jessica had deliberately manipulated the scene, using fake blood to create a false narrative designed to mislead investigators. This discovery not only revealed the extent of their deception, but also reinforced the calculated nature of their actions. It became clear that the couple had gone to great lengths to cover their tracks, attempting to mask the brutal reality of what had happened to Amora. With this startling revelation, investigators pressed harder, determined to unravel every layer of lies and bring the truth to light. The deliberate staging of the crime scene painted a chilling picture, not just of the physical violence inflicted on Amora, but of the cold, methodical efforts to hide the truth about her tragic death.
They had even gone so far as to use some fake blood, if you will, and we're approaching Halloween time now. We're familiar with fake blood.
The shocking discovery of the true crime scene in the south bedroom painted a far more disturbing picture. Blood spatter patterns suggested blunt force trauma had occurred in the room, contradicting the staged scene initially presented to authorities. Investigators uncovered further incriminating evidence, including bloodstained bedding, baby clothes, diapers, wipes, a tube of Astroglide lubricant, and a pair of jeans with bloodstains on the lap. DNA testing later confirmed the horrifying truth. The blood belonged to Amora. The evidence left no doubt that the brutal acts had occurred there, not where Mam and Jessica had claimed. The case took another sinister turn 2 days later, on December 13, 2008, when Mam made a desperate call from jail to his aunt. He begged her to dispose of evidence hidden beneath the bathroom floor. Instead of complying, his aunt alerted the Rusk County Sheriff. Acting on her tip, authorities returned to the trailer and retrieved a pipe wrench concealed in a clear plastic bag under the floorboards. Forensic analysis confirmed the worst. The pipe wrench bore traces of Amora's DNA, identifying it as the weapon used during the horrific exorcism. The revelation that Mam had hidden the wrench solidified his intent to cover up the crime. Additional forensic evidence deepened the horror. Dr. Robert Williams, a forensic odontologist, analyzed the bite marks on Amora's body, comparing them to dental impressions from Mam and Jessica. His findings revealed that 8 of the bite marks matched Mam's teeth, while at least 1 matched Jessica's. This grim evidence implicated Jessica as an active participant in the horrific acts against her own daughter. The idea that a mother could inflict such cruelty shocked even seasoned investigators, sending them on a grueling quest for answers. The breakthrough came in January 2009 when Shirley B., a nurse at the Rusk County Jail, received an urgent call from Mam. She found him in his cell, crying, with a written request to speak with Sergeant Rogers. Through tears, Mam confessed, saying, "I did it. The blame, it wasn't her. My dad told me to be a man, and I've been reading my Bible. Please tell Jessica I love her." This confession brought investigators closer to understanding the motivations behind Mam's actions, but it also raised haunting questions. Recorded home videos showed Mam as a doting father, lovingly playing with and adoring little Amora. Even from jail, he professed his love for her repeatedly. What could drive him to commit such unspeakable acts? And why did Jessica, a seemingly caring mother, stand by him through it all? Forensic psychologists attributed the tragedy to a combination of early parenthood and severe methamphetamine addiction. The drug abuse had warped their perceptions of reality, fueled delusions, and exacerbated the already volatile dynamics of their relationship. These factors, combined with the couple's manipulation of religious beliefs, created the perfect storm that led to Amora's senseless and tragic death. The case remains one of the most disturbing examples of how delusion, addiction, and unchecked violence can culminate in devastating consequences, leaving behind haunting questions about the depths of human cruelty.
We had a couple of doctors that testified. There was a pretty substantial amount of methamphetamine in Blaine's system after he was detained.
But were these factors, early parenthood and drug addiction, truly the sole catalyst for such a heinous act? Authorities delved deeper into the couple's backgrounds, determined to uncover the root causes of their actions. While Jessica had no prior criminal record, Mam's history revealed a disturbing pattern of violence and deviance. Mam was already a registered assault offender in Rusk County. On August 22, 2008, he had been arrested for assaulting a minor and sentenced to 180 days in jail. However, he served only 48 days before being released under the condition that he avoid places where children gathered. Despite this restriction, the court failed to monitor his whereabouts after his release. This oversight allowed him to live in close proximity to Amora, something that should never have happened. The situation grew even more troubling when Jessica admitted that she had been fully aware of Mam's status as a registered offender. She confessed to knowing about his criminal past but claimed to believe that he would never harm her daughter. Investigators also uncovered that Mam had an extensive and sordid criminal history beyond the assault conviction. His record painted a picture of a man with a deeply troubled and violent past. Jessica's decision to remain with Mam, despite knowing his history, raised serious questions about her judgment and her role in Amora's tragic death. How could a mother willingly expose her child to such danger? The revelations cast further doubt on Jessica's claims of innocence, suggesting a disturbing level of complicity in allowing Mam to remain in Amora's life. These details highlighted systemic failures, from the inadequate monitoring of Mam's release to Jessica's choices, all of which culminated in the horrific events that claimed the life of an innocent child. As authorities pieced together the couple's past, they sought to understand whether these background factors were enough to explain the unfathomable cruelty inflicted on Amora, or if something even darker lay beneath the surface.
He broke into an 11-year-old girl's house, and it was an 11-year-old girl who he'd been homeschooled with. He broke in and he actually put some dirty pictures, I would say it's the wrong way to phrase it, material, very graphic material. A magazine? Yes, sir. With notations on it with a Sharpie, meet me out back, we can do these kind of things. It was clearly a criminal solicitation of a minor, trying to encourage her to engage in acts with him, which is a felony offense.
In March 2007, Milam had been arrested for burglarizing a home in Russ County where he left vulgar notes. In a minor girl's bedroom during the investigation, investigator William Brown discovered mutilated adult magazine images in the minor's bedroom, which Milam had defaced with explicit comments revealing his sinister intentions towards the minor. This incident showcased the alarming and disturbing nature of Milam. However, he was released soon after, as he had not taken any steps to actualize his depraved fantasy. Against the minor, investigators also discovered that he had a fascination with demonology and engaging in occult practices, including using a Ouija board to communicate with spirits. Milam's cousin Tammy Russell also corroborated this fact.
I've actually seen, and I've actually played with a Ouija board when I was younger, and I've seen bad things happen, and I ain't touched one since.
Milam's childhood was marked by an unconventional upbringing. He was withdrawn from school in the 4th grade and homeschooled by his father. According to former teachers and childhood friends, Milam was a shy and reserved boy with a deep passion for music. This artistic inclination gave glimpses of a more sensitive side to his personality, which sharply contrasted with the darkness that later emerged. As an adult, Milam worked at Big 5 Tire in Longview, where his manager, Gary Jenkins, described him as a dedicated employee and a doting father. Milam often brought his daughter Amora to the workplace, showcasing a tender and loving side that many found endearing. This outward display of devotion painted a conflicting picture of Milam, one that made it harder to reconcile with the atrocities he would later commit. Even during his time on death row, Milam continued to express his love for Amora, further deepening the mystery of how a man who professed such affection for his child could have caused her so much suffering. His actions and declarations left investigators and psychologists grappling with the complexities of his psyche and the motivations behind the horrific tragedy.
Beautiful. She was beautiful. Wasn't walking yet, but she was beautiful. Her first words were "Daddy."
On the other hand, Jessica presented a stark contrast to Milam in many ways. She was a well-educated and stylish woman, known for her vibrant personality and confident demeanor. Friends and family described her as someone who enjoyed socializing and took pride in her appearance. Despite her outward charm, Jessica also had a deeply troubling past. Beneath her polished exterior, Jessica struggled with unresolved trauma and emotional instability. Though she became a devoted mother to Amora, her past choices and relationships hinted at patterns of dependency and vulnerability. These traits left her susceptible to manipulation, especially when she crossed paths with Milam, whose controlling and abusive tendencies soon took over her life. Jessica's transformation after meeting Milam was both rapid and alarming. Once outgoing and self-assured, she became withdrawn and isolated, cutting off friends and family under Milam's influence. Her willingness to remain complicit in the horrors inflicted on her daughter reflected a disturbing combination of fear, dependence, and perhaps even shared delusion. As investigators pieced together her role in Amora's tragic death, they were confronted with the complexities of a woman whose education and devotion to her child were overshadowed by her inability, or unwillingness, to protect her daughter from the man who ultimately brought about her end.
Perhaps other issues in her childhood, one I think was finding her father that had committed suicide quite a few years earlier.
Jessica's life was profoundly shaped by a traumatic experience she endured at the age of 10, discovering her father's lifeless body. This harrowing event left an indelible mark on her psyche, fostering a lifelong belief that she could communicate with spirits and entities from the other world. This belief, combined with unresolved grief, made her particularly vulnerable to manipulation, especially when Mam introduced her to his fascination with demonology and occult practices. Mam's behavior, on the other hand, was deeply perplexing. Despite the brutality of his actions and the horrific outcome of the so-called exorcism, he showed no genuine remorse. Years after the incident, during an interview, Mam acted as though nothing had happened, presenting himself as innocent and unaware of the gravity of his crimes. His detached demeanor and lack of accountability added another layer of darkness to his already sinister personality. This stark contrast, Jessica's vulnerability shaped by trauma and Mam's cold indifference, created a destructive dynamic that spiraled into tragedy. While Jessica's belief in the supernatural seemed rooted in pain and confusion, Mam's behavior appeared calculated and devoid of empathy, leaving investigators to question the depth of his capacity for cruelty.
I'm doing good. So far, so good. I guess today, first media visit. I ain't never had a media visit. And I love you, Mama.
In the end, it became clear that Mam's professed love for Amora was nothing more than a mask concealing his violent and depraved inclinations. Jessica, entangled in a web of fear, manipulation, and misguided loyalty, played an undeniable role in the horrific events. Together, their warped mindsets, shaped by criminal and psychotic impulses, led them to believe they could harm a defenseless baby without facing consequences. Their actions revealed a chilling disregard for innocence and humanity, driven by delusions and unchecked cruelty. The tragedy of Amora's death stands as a harrowing reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked violence, manipulation, and a descent into shared delusion.
The mother of Amora was psychotic.
I submit that there's just evil in the world, and this is true evil as opposed to blaming drugs or the Ouija board or the devil or anything like that.
As the dark reality of Mam and Jessica's actions came to light, the case offered a chilling glimpse into the depths of human depravity and the devastating consequences of their unchecked motives. On December 2nd, 2008, both Mam and Jessica were arrested and held in Rusk County Jail, each on a $2 million bond, facing charges of capital murder. The severity of the crime shocked the community, with Rusk County Judge Bob Richardson describing it as the most atrocious case he had encountered in his 30-year career. During their trial in May 2010, jurors were confronted with graphic and heartbreaking evidence, including photos of Amora's extensive injuries. The images moved many to tears, highlighting the sheer brutality of the acts inflicted on the defenseless child. After the trial concluded, several jurors shared their emotions outside the Rusk County Courthouse, visibly shaken by the enormity of the tragedy they had witnessed. The trial served as a grim reminder of the horrifying depths to which individuals can sink when driven by delusion, violence, and manipulation. It also underscored the lasting impact of Amora's tragic death on all who encountered her story, leaving an indelible mark on the hearts of the community and those tasked with delivering justice.
The words to describe, I spent 15 years as a volunteer on the volunteer fire department, riding with the ambulance, and seen horrible things, but nothing compared to this.
Very emotionally stressed, disturbed. I don't think there was a dry eye in the jury. I don't know about the audience.
It won't leave. It won't be over. Something that we'll remember forever.
Finally, on May 27, 2010, Mam was convicted of capital murder and sentenced to death. Jessica, for her role in the horrific crime, received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. While prosecutors sought the death penalty for Mam by lethal injection, his defense team prepared to appeal, arguing for a life sentence without parole on the grounds of his alleged mental disabilities. Since then, Mam's execution has been postponed multiple times, and as of 2024, he remains on death row. Despite the convictions and the community's collective sigh of relief at the justice served for Amora, the case continued to weigh heavily on those involved. Amora's story left an indelible mark on Rusk County, serving as both a tragic reminder of the depths of human cruelty and a cautionary tale about the consequences of unchecked violence and manipulation. Yet even as justice was delivered, Mam's mother publicly mourned her son's fate, steadfastly insisting on his innocence. Her grief highlighted the ripple effects of the tragedy, touching even those on the periphery of the crime. The community, however, held firm in its resolve, finding solace in knowing that the perpetrators were held accountable and that Amora's voice was not forgotten.
Sometimes I cry all the way from Livingston to home because it just feels so bad about having to leave him. Yeah, I'm afraid because I know he's innocent. I'm afraid for all of them in there, actually. I don't even think they should have a death penalty.
What an irony of fate. One mother's love turned lethal, leading to the tragic loss of her own child, while another mother wept for the son she had raised, a man convicted of being a vicious killer. This stark contrast of maternal devotion highlighted the complexities and heart-wrenching layers of the case, where love, in its twisted forms, played a pivotal role. Prosecutor Michael Jemerson, however, held a firm and unflinching opinion about Mam. During the trial, Jemerson described Mam as a manipulative and calculating individual who used both fear and delusion as weapons to inflict unspeakable harm. He expressed no doubt about Mam's culpability, calling the evidence against him overwhelming and undeniable. For Jemerson, Mam's actions went beyond any excuse of mental disability or emotional distress. They were the calculated choices of a man capable of immense cruelty. Jemerson further stated that Amora's death was not just a tragic accident or a result of impaired judgment, but a deliberate and methodical act of violence. His resolute stance reflected the community's demand for justice, ensuring that the case served as a somber reminder of the devastating consequences of unchecked brutality.
Human beings don't do that to other human beings. And we've got a right to defend our species from people like Blaine Milam. He does not define us. People don't do that to other people. He is outside of humanity, I submit. And we have every right as a people to denote that he is outside of humanity and to tell Blaine Milam, you don't define who we are. You don't have a say over who we are. We define who we are. And we are not capable of that sort of evil. And we are allowed to erase you from our existence. We are allowed to eliminate you from our race, from our species.
Before we conclude, we want to express our heartfelt condolences to Amora Carson's loved ones. Her life, though tragically brief, serves as a solemn reminder of the vulnerability of innocence and the importance of justice. In the end, lingering questions remain. Did justice truly prevail for Amora, the innocent child whose life was taken in such a cruel and senseless manner? Or does Mam's death sentence serve as a necessary deterrent for future predators, an unequivocal message that such heinous acts will not be tolerated? While these questions may never be fully resolved, what cannot be questioned is the deep sorrow and lasting impact of Amora's loss. Her story urges us all to reflect, seek accountability, and protect those who cannot protect themselves.